I'm Stephen Haig with the engineering team here at Walker Manufacturing. Today, I'm with Dean Walker to introduce the A56 Perfaerator and dig into some of the details about this unit. Dean, to start, can you tell us a little bit about the story of development and how we got here today to this product?
Well, this product goes back somewhere around 20 years ago, and we produced a unit conceptually that was similar to this, but because we had some reliability and serviceability issues with that product, we discontinued it after several years, and it's been sitting idle basically since then. About 11 years ago, I was actually working on a updated version of this product, but because of various other projects through the years, it kept getting pushed back. But it's something that we've been interested in pursuing, re-engineering, reintroducing into the marketplace here for a number of years, because it's a very viable attachment on the front of a Walker mower that enhances the capability of the mower. One of the things that we ran into with the first version was just the on and off of trailers, and the tines on this Perfaerator retract, but on the first version they didn't really retract far enough, and so getting on and off of trailers was a problem with the first one. And then also the first one had a single piece crank on it, and so if you had to replace a bearing or whatever on the cranks, if it was on the wrong side anyway, you had to disassemble the whole thing in order to repair the part. So this new version has basically individual tines and on a crankshaft with rod bearings similar to what would be in an engine. And so if you have to replace a bearing or a tine or component, you basically all you have to do is work on that single one. So this is a plugger style aerator, which the first version was as well. So the basic concept, how it functions, is the same as what we originally had. But again, we tried to address some issues with this one to make it more serviceable, more reliable. Productivity-wise, it's very similar to what the first one was. We do have a speed indicator on the unit that helps you adjust the speed, the travel speed of the tractor, of the Perfaerator. There's a natural walking action of this unit, and so you, as an operator, need to adjust your ground speed to work in conjunction with or to coordinate it with the natural walking speed of the Perfaerator, and that's what this speed indicator allows you to do.
What's the advantage of the plugger style versus the other options you see out there on the market?
Well, the plugger style aerator is a more aggressive style of aeration, and so while it's still important that the ground have a certain amount or a decent amount of moisture in it, because it is more aggressive, it tends to be more consistent and a more productive way of aerating over a variety of soil conditions and moisture conditions. I would also say that because the action of the tines entering and retracting, coming out of the ground, it makes the Perfaerator unit be a little more maneuverable as far as being able to turn around beds, turn radius versus a drum style aerator that tends to be more engaged into the ground.
Which would limit your radius and set a pretty constant radius, minimum radius that you could turn at, whereas with this you could take the tines out of the ground and do a normal end row turn and kind of get back going the opposite direction.
Right, you operate this very similar as you would a mower deck, in that you basically make passes, a down and back pass. You'll get to the end of a run, disengage the clutch, which allows the tines to retract out of the ground, turn the machine around and go the opposite direction, re-engage the PTO, and off you go. So it's your amount of downtime when you're operating it is held to a minimum.
So obviously the Walker mower typically has the out front PTO, which is driving the cutting deck when you're mowing. In this case, we're using that PTO to power this aerator attachment. Can you explain how we how we get the power transferred and kind of some of the critical design features in reducing that 3,000 RPM PTO output to the speed we need at the cam.
Yeah, so the Perfaerator crank operates at a considerably lower RPM than a mower deck, so we have to go through quite a bit of reduction, and we're achieving that through 3 different stages. The first stage is a gearbox mounted here that is driven by the PTO shaft, and that's the initial stage of reduction. And then we go to a chain reduction, sprocket chain reduction coming off of the gearbox. It is a O-ring sealed chain, so it's made to operate in kind of a difficult environment. The final stage is a belt drive coming off the end of the cross shaft here that drives up to the crank assemblies. Again, the final stage of reduction, but the belt provides a cushioning effect for impacts that inevitably happen with a plugger style perforator as this is.
I noticed when you went to talk about the drivetrain, you tilted this cover up. That's a subtle but kind of critical feature. You talk about that, the 2 covers, and why we hinged them the way we did.
It's one of the things that we've always tried to do on Walker mowers, is that we realize that everything needs to be serviced. And so the accessibility of the components is critical. So yeah, we have 2 different covers on this piece here. One is the rear cover, the one that I just opened. And then we also have a front cover here that opens to allow you to have access to the actual crank assemblies themselves. Normally, there's not a lot that has to happen up here other than each tine does have a grease zerk on it to lubricate the bearing of the tine assembly. And we recommend that those be greased approximately every 4 hours of operation. And there is a particular grease that we recommend for this application. And as I pointed out earlier, these are individual rod bearing cranks. And so if in time you need to replace the actual bearing in the crank, it's simply by removing the cap of the tine and replacing the bearing. And the other thing that you can see here is the belt drive that's driving the crank. We have these removable plates, bearing plates on the end of the crank that need to be removed in order to change the belt, but it's a pretty easy process.
So remember earlier you mentioned that the ability to retract the tines is advantageous for loading and offloading on trailers, and then also completing those end road turns. How do you retract the tines in order to do those functions on this unit?
So moving to the back of the machine again, this handle here is the handle that actuates what we call the retractor plates, which the retractor plates are the plates that the tines actually operate down through, and they do 2 things. One, they control the action of the tines while they're actually in the ground, but then they also are attached to this handle, which allows them to be retracted out of the ground. So let me show you how that operates here. This is the operating position. When you're operating, the retractor plates actually swing down to where the tines are operating almost in a vertical position. The other thing to note is that the retractor plate position is directly connected to your speed indicator. So as the retractor plates move back and forth with speed changes, it also changes your speed indicator here. When you're actually operating the unit, you're sitting on the machine like this, and you're operating the retractor plates like this. To start operation of the perforator, the first thing to do is to release the retractor plates by depressing the button on the handle, letting the handle go forward. The next step is to engage the forward speed control, allowing the tractor to start moving forward. And then the final step is to engage the PTO. After the PTO is engaged and you're moving forward, then you want to look at your speed indicator to, again, coordinate the tractor speed with the natural walking speed of the crank assembly on the perforator.
How critical is that speed and the balance between the speed of the tractor and the natural cadence of the perforator? And what happens if you're out of balance one way or the other between those?
So while it's not super critical, it is important to maintain the speed of the tractor, coordinating it with the natural walking speed of the perforator. If you're going to err on the side of one or the other, it's better to go too fast than too slow. If you're going too fast, you basically just do not get full penetration of the tine into the ground. If you're going too slow, the tine will be operating in the front of the slot of the retractor plate, which can cause heat and increased wear.
So you've told us a lot about the maintainability of this unit and some of the key features and the operations. One key feature we haven't talked about yet is the jack wheel. Can you tell us about that and why we included it in the design?
The jack wheel is an item that we added to the rear of the perforator in order to support it when it is not mounted to the tractor. This perforator weighs about 500 pounds, and so there's a fair amount of weight that you're dealing with when it is mounting and dismounting. It is operated with this lead screw, and you need a 3/4 inch wrench or a socket in order to lower and retract the jack wheel.
Well, thanks, Dean, for spending some time with us today to go over the details of the perforator. And I know it's been a long development process and really excited to get it out in the field operating for our customers. Some final specifications for everyone today. The perforator is 48-inch overall width if you're trying to get in and out of gates or narrow spaces. But the tines, the 12 tines, will punch holes 42 inches wide, 2 3/4 inches deep, and that'll get you up to 60,000 square feet per hour of aeration. The perforator is compatible on models B, C, T, D, and H. On model H, you need to change out the foot platforms, which is simple bolt-on parts. You just change those out with the correct components. We were really excited to get to tell you about the perforator today. We believe it's a highly productive attachment for the walker mower. It's going to add great value to our customers. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.